Συνεχίζουμε λοιπόν την δεύτερη μέρα.
Let's go to the second session of the second day of the AgriBusiness Forum. We have the pleasure to continue on the same thematic as the first session. I would like to thank Mr. Balakakis for his invitation. I must say that I was rather surprised because the setup of the AgriBusiness Forum has changed, and I think it is an interesting change. Let me now welcome to this panel our distinguished guests and panelists. It is a great honor to be moderating this session. There will be some changes in the agenda. Mr. Kedikoglou couldn't attend, so there will be some other changes as well. In order to continue with this session, allow me to make a short introduction to our topic, starting with a recent statement by Franz Timmermans, the Vice President of the European Commission, the first Vice Chairman, and the person that inspired the European Green Deal. He recently said that humanity is faced today with so many challenges to such an extent rarely seen in the past in the history of humanity. He added that these challenges happen simultaneously, and I believe that during the previous session we talked about these consecutive crises that affect the world and clearly the agri-food system. The same thing applies to challenges related to the agri-food sector. So, at the same time, simultaneously, there are many various challenges that demonstrate the interdependence, connectivity, and vulnerability of the system. The pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis came on top of other modern challenges, such as climate and environment, the quality and safety of food, the new consumer behaviors. All these factors have an effect on agricultural production. But when it comes to the pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis, a series of issues were established that actually concern us when it comes to the agri-food policy. So we realized how connected and interdependent the world is and how complicated the structure of our agri-food system is. Let me remind you something that I used to say in the past. Wheat from Ukraine goes to Istanbul, it is turned into flour, they go to China to turn into noodles and then be exported throughout the world. A single turbulence in this chain creates many problems. So, at the same time, we experienced problems in the supply chain and in the transport. So, during the pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis, the value of healthy diet was highlighted, as well as the dietary value of specific products. We also highlighted the risks of a global food crisis. I would say that these challenges can be summarized in the environmental consequences due to the climate crisis, the energy consequences because of the energy crisis and the skyrocketing energy cost, and thirdly, social challenges because of the food uncertainty and the increasing poverty and social inequalities throughout the world. There are consequences on the cost of production, on the agricultural production, on the supply chain, and international trade. And all these challenges and crises make us concerned about food safety, since all previously mentioned factors influence the availability of food and their affordability. To realize how vulnerable we are, the European Commission announced in April or March in their short-term outlook report that there is no problem at all when it comes to wheat sufficiency. And this report explained the reasons why there will be no problem for 2023. Today, we all know that officially the European Commission has announced that there will be a decrease in the production of wheat by 20%, more than 20%, because of the impact of the climate change last summer. So we can all understand how versatile and fluid the situation is. There is a problem in the sufficiency of food because climate conditions affect the production, and as we said before in the previous session, there is a very crucial issue, the issue of affordability. Which becomes more serious as time goes by. And extra threats and risks emerge, such as the risk of migration flows because of the food crisis. We know that Africa has a demographic situation that's explosive. 77% of sub-Saharan Africa is below 35 years of age. They don't have access to, if they don't have access to food and the cultivation of land, the impact will be huge. So what are the answers to all those threats and challenges? The rural policy, the European Commission answers in a strategic way by submitting a new proposal for the CAP, a new delivery model, and plans a European Green Deal and farm-to-fork strategies, biodiversity strategies, in order to respond to these challenges. At the same time, on the short-term basis, to respond to the pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis, a series of measures are taken in order to tackle the consequences of these crises. There is more initiative now given to member states in order to respond to these challenges. At the same time, it designs policy tools in order to tackle some aspects of this crisis, which are integrated into the new CAP. Such as knowledge, precision agriculture, advice, which will all serve the need for the transition of the agri-food system to a new era. All the above add to the already known challenges and problems of the Greek agriculture
και το δικό μας αγροδιατροφικό σύστημα.
and our own
Και το ερώτημα που
agri-food
τίθεται
system.
και
And the
οι
question
συνάδελφοι
which
που είναι
is
στο πάνελ
raised,
καλούνται
and the
ουσιαστικά να
question
συμβάλλουν
which our
σε αυτή τη
panelists are
συζήτηση
called upon to
και
respond
γνωρίζω
to
ότι συμβάλλουν με τις εισηγήσεις τους, να απαντήσουμε με ποιο στρατηγικό
is
σχέδιο,
which will be the strategic plan that will allow us to move to this new area, which will be the strategy, which will be the individual policy tools that will allow us to overcome the accumulated
η σύνθεση
impasses.
του πάνελ δημιουργεί κατά την
The
άποψή μου
composition
και
of
τον
this
άλλο
panel
για την εκτίμηση, τις προϋποθέσεις να συζητήσουμε ουσιαστικά και να απαντήσουμε σε
allows
αυτούς
me
τους
to
προβληματισμούς,
say that we
χάρη
can
στη
have a
δυνατότητα
substantial
που μας
discussion
δίνει το AgriBusiness Forum σήμερα.
thanks to the opportunity provided by the
Έχουμε
AgriBusiness
λοιπόν,
Forum.
και ξεκινώ από τον πρώτο ομιλητή,
So our first
τον
speaker
συνάδελφο τον Στάθιο
is
Κλονάρη, καθηγητή
Stathis
στο
Klonaris,
Τμήμα Αγροτικής Οικονομίας και Ανάπτυξης του Ιαπωνικού Πανεπιστημίου, που εδώ έχει και μια άλλη
professor
ιδιότητα,
at
να
the
μας
Agricultural
μιλήσει
University
για το
of
στρατηγικό
Athens,
σχέδιο
who
που η
will
Ελλάδα
be
υπέβαλε στην Ευρωπαϊκή
talking
Επιτροπή
about the strategic plan submitted by Greece to the European Commission for the new CAP and for agricultural development. Stathis Klonaris was the coordinator and head of the team that drafted the plan, so he will talk about the framework of the Greek strategic plan. Then I will give the floor to Professor Gemtos. Then the floor to Mr. Kalfas, and we will close with Mr. Giannakakis.
Εκπροσώπους του αγροτικού κόσμου να συζητήσουμε αυτά τα προβλήματα που μόλις ανέφερα.
Because it would be nice to wrap up this session with a representative of the agricultural world. Now, the floor to Mr. Klonaris. Let me remind you that each speaker has 12 minutes, 15 maximum. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank personally Mr. Balakakis and the organizers of the AgriBusiness Forum for the kind invitation extended to me. I will start from a question by Mr. Riesen in the previous session. He asked them, what's nice about this policy? Is there anything good about this policy, this new policy? And I will share a personal experience. About 1 month ago, I was in the Agrotica Expo as a panelist in an international company panel where producers and the CEO of the company explained how they have adapted to this Green Deal, to this Green Growth Initiative, and what they do in order to implement this policy. My question to them was, why? Why did you start these actions? Why did the organic producers start doing that, and why did the CEO said that? They said that this was the mindset of the company, the vision of the organic farmer, but indirectly they admitted that the driven force was the policy, because the policy is what drives big changes, especially in the agri-food sector. And those of us who have studied this policy for years, we can see that it is a rather complex policy with no immediate results. So some years have to go by in order for the results to become visible. So right now we have a new CAP, which started with the European Green Deal, which includes two strategies about the agri-food sector, the biodiversity and the farm-to-fork strategy. These policies have to be implemented in the strategic plan submitted by each member state. That's a first for the European Union. It's the first time that the strategic plan is prepared for the entire agri-food sector. In the past, there was a plan under the second pillar, and then we kept track of the objectives, of the targets. Now, even under the first pillar, where the direct payments are included, we have to measure everything based on the results. There are specific KPIs to measure them. So two things have to be taken into account when designing the strategic plan. First of all, the context, the framework, the policy, and secondly, the KPIs. Now let's go to the submitted Greek strategic plan. As Mr. Kassimis said, there are some ongoing problems for the Greek farming sector. Fragmented land plots, very small land plots, but that's not necessarily bad. Inequality in the distribution of aids, many aids to very few beneficiaries. A big part of payments, about 60 to 70%, is given to 20% of beneficiaries. Something must be done about that. Low productivity. We measured that the technical efficiency of Greek agriculture is around 60%. 100% in some sectors or much lower in other sectors. The average is 60%. Collapse of cooperatives, as Mr. Giannakakis pointed out before. This gives no room for achievement of visions, as it happened in Spain. Lack of connection between research and production. Research results from Greek universities that have been widely published. Greek researchers are at the top. Nevertheless, there is no practical implementation in the field. And, of course, lack of advisory services. The Ministry of Agriculture lost its antennas because it went to the hands of regions. And now private bodies provide advice to farmers. Now, let's see what the challenges are for the new CAP. First of all, we have to produce food. That's the main function of the primary sector. The population needs to be fed. Secondly, those that produce food have to receive an income that will motivate them to continue producing. Third, quite recent one, contribute to the mitigation of climate change. Climate change is present. We've all experiencing extreme weather conditions, and it's something that will become probably more intense over the years to come. Europe, it was the first continent in the world that created a framework, the European Green Deal, which means a climate-neutral Europe by 2050. And this should become part of the new CAP. And as these challenges play along, there is an extra factor, the Russian-Ukrainian war, which brings about the food crisis risk. So we started around 2020 to plan for the new programming period, the new CAP, the framework. For our producers to produce their food. Here you can see a time schedule of this journey that lasted about 3 years. The SWOT analysis took a lot of time because we had to identify the weaknesses, the advantages, the threats, the opportunities for the Greek primary sector. Then we had to identify the needs and prioritize them. Did researchers do that on their own? No, it was through consultation. We invited almost 1,200 stakeholders from the agricultural sector to provide their opinion and discuss with us. And following that, we started preparing the measures that would serve these needs. We talked about the funds necessary. So in December 2020, we presented our SWOT analysis to the Parliament and then to the European Union. The first comments by the European Commission were made in April 2022, 220 remarks that had to be answered. Some of them were rather easy to answer, or some of them needed a little bit of work from us, or other ones were purely political comments. We managed to resubmit for approval our strategic plan in October 2022. Unfortunately, we were a bit delayed in this, and we will pay a cost for that. We estimated that we should have completed this process by June 22 in order then to organize awareness-raising activities. We've lost winter crops because Greek farmers are not aware of the new strategic plan. Now, let's see the main pillars of this policy. The first one is, of course, the basic income support. The system was radically changed in 2003. This is called income support, which is not based on what they will produce. So now the system, the same system as the previous programming period was maintained. 3 agricultural regions, the same percentages per region, and about 830 million euros per year. That's not the same figure as in the previous programming period, because part of it went to the redistributive payment. According to our estimates, as you can see on your screen, come from data that we processed. They will not change. The reality will be more or less what you see on your screen. The second measure is the redistributive payment, which is for the first time implemented in Greece. So part of the payments from large producers will be given to small and medium-sized producers. It was not so easy to define what small and medium-sized producer is. So we based our strategy not on the surface of the land. Of course, the payment is per hectare, but we explored what's the economic profit of each enterprise and then converted into hectares. This table shows that in arable crops, this payment will be given to those that grow in a hectare of 2 to 11 hectares. In permanent crops, 1 to 4 is the maximum surface, and when it comes to pastures, 1 to 17. I forgot to say before that when it comes to basic income support, there will be the convergence of the value of rights. So each producer at the end of the period will get the exact same money as a similar producer in the same region. In the past, we had introduced a historic factor. Just 2 minutes left anyway. Very, very quickly. Coupled payments. 19 products. We give coupled payments for 19 products. The new payment is for maize because of the food crisis. We can further discuss about this in the Q&A session. Eco schemes, it's a new policy measure because of the climate changes and the European Green Deal. It is a package of 430 million per year. So anybody which produces public goods is remunerated. So any producer willingly participating in this eco scheme will receive the relevant payment. Sectoral projects. We have the same 4 sectoral programs: olive oil, honey, beehive, fruit and vegetable, and wine. Now we want the cooperatives that will participate in the olive oil scheme will have to have more turnover than compared to the previous programming period. Now, second pillar programs amount to 350 million per year. Here you can see the relevant pie chart, almost the same as the previous programming period. A new addition is the one related to the AGI system, because it will help boost the Greek agriculture. Now, the AGI system, the European Agricultural Knowledge and Innovation Systems. The entire strategic plan is based on the success, on the AGI's success. Based on a previous European Union report, Greece ranks last. Our AGI's system was characterized as weak and fragmented, with many deficits. We made a proposal about how AGIS should be, involving a national commission, a coordinating body, the Special Management Agency, the Geotechnical Chamber of Greece, the National Rural Network, the Ministry of Rural Development will play a major role. The reserve, the repository, will be the main digital tool for AGIS, and each advisor will have access to this repository in order to either send questions or receive information which will then be passed to the producer. To conclude, what are the outlooks, the perspectives? We want to eliminate inequalities. There were many complaints from young farmers which grew in the same area as an older farmer, and they received fewer money because of historical rights. This is eliminated, this is abolished. Decrease of the unequal distribution of direct payments. Now payments will be distributed more fairly, not entirely fairly, but more fairly. Contribution of the Greek agriculture in achieving the European Green Deal targets. Re-establishment of geo-applications through the AGI system of agri-applications, and of course this will hopefully lead us to the increase of productivity. I have to underline that the agri-food sector has a gross value of 6.5 billion per year. So with the same inputs, we can increase by 40%. If we translate it into money, this is 2.5 billion euros per year, which is equal to the amount of the payments. So, isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth trying? Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τον κύριο Κλονάρη για την εισαγωγή.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klonaris, for this introduction to the strategic plan. I believe that we should all hope that awareness will be raised among the farmers and the producers so that the strategic planning can enjoy full implementation. And of course, everyone should be prepared to adapt accordingly in order not to face serious problems. The issue brought forward by Mr. Klonaris when it comes to the use of the AGIS system, I'm talking about the Agricultural Knowledge and Innovation System, is of paramount importance. I don't think we do have AGIS. And on top of that, we're also lacking the key ingredients of AGIS: agricultural advice, organized knowledge, and by organized I mean institutionally regulated, and innovation, of course. That's what AGIS is all about. We want to be able to have the AGIS system. When it comes now to the climate crisis and energy, well, that's an issue that has to do with production and boosting agricultural income. How are we going to achieve all these things? Those are the key issues that should be addressed. How can we make up for the agricultural production and income that will be impacted by the climate crisis and the adoption of the Green Deal or the green architecture of the CAP? Mr. Gemtos will talk about that. He's my colleague, a professor emeritus at Thessaly University. Mr. Gemtos has been for many years now working on issues that have to do with mechanization of agriculture, energy, farming, management of agricultural equipment and precision agriculture. And today he's here to talk about that. On the one hand, how we will be able to tackle all the problems that emerge and the risks that emerge from the climate crisis, and the type of agriculture that will allow us to increase productivity in those difficult conditions. And the model proposed by Mr. Gemtos that he is going to propose today is the application of the conservation agriculture.
Ευχαριστώ, Μπάμπη, για την εισαγωγή.
Thank you, Babis, for this introduction. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Yannis Balakakis and I would also like to thank the entire team of the AgriBusiness Forum. I would like to start my presentation by making a brief introduction. Apparently, we are currently going through a period of uncertainty. We have gone through all those things. We had COVID, we have disruption of our food supply chain, then the war emerged, an energy crisis came in, shortages in some foods due to inability of exports, and of course, in all that, one should also consider climate change, which remains a living, an actual risk. And of course, we're being faced with a political system that is unable to make a national comprehensive agricultural policy. I believe that this is a problem. I will try to present you those problems, and I would also like to make some suggestions as to the possible solutions. Let's start with agriculture. We know that's a too complicated system. Tens of parameters affect its operation. Producers need to combine many things in order to grow. I would say that agriculture today is a sort of industrial agriculture with huge inputs and interventions that needs to tackle numerous challenges, and of course it also generates problems to the environment due to the high level of inputs. I believe that today agriculture is under pressure because the reduction in the arable land that is available. I'm afraid that over the past 70 years our state has adopted no measure whatsoever in order to address this risk. I don't know what will happen in the future. We know that the European Commission is exerting pressure, is putting pressure on the member states to move towards this direction, but anyway. On the other hand, we have been faced with technical problems due to the technical projects that further reduce arable land. We also have the photovoltaic parks that are installed in fertile arable land rather than being installed on rocky, infertile land. And another problem for Greek agriculture is the fact that the soil is no longer as healthy as it was. And let's face it, soil is the basis, the foundation of production. Another problem has to do with the overpopulation on the earth. Yesterday, I was listening to the news that we have 8 billion people. We expect this number to further rise, so you do realize that this requires high production rates. And apparently the impact of climate change is always on the agenda. So, is climate change here? Well, I have to admit that 10, 15 years ago, everyone believed that this was part of the far future. I'm going to talk about Thessaly. Over the past 2 years, we have been faced with very bizarre phenomena. It all started out with Ianos, with extremely heavy rainfall. Then we had floods at Thessaly and Karditsa. The government takes pride on the fact that they paid €400 million in compensation for those damages, but I would like to say that half of that money would have been enough to do the water reservoirs at any pass, and if that had been the case, then we wouldn't have seen those extensive floods in the areas. So you do realize that this is a critical problem. In 2021, we had 10 days of extreme heat wave that had a severe impact on our crops. There was also a problem with temperature fluctuations, and we say that today we might have 23 degrees, and the next day we might have 36 degrees Celsius. So you do realize how detrimental that was for the crops. And of course, we also have strong winds. Some days of heat wave in early May. And all those things are phenomena that have arrived and have a severe impact. You do realize that now agriculture is being faced with an actual climate crisis. And our situation is rather peculiar because on the one side, agriculture will suffer the consequences of climate change, and on the other hand, agriculture can also contribute to reducing greenhouse gases emissions. You can see the pie chart here. You see the percentage of greenhouse gas emissions that are due to agriculture. And on the other hand, agriculture can help to carbon sequestration and removal from the air. So you could realize that this is an inextricable part of this chain. In order for agriculture to adapt to those conditions, we need to develop a climate-resilient agriculture, an agriculture that will make rational use of water, soil, land, wind, all the natural resources. And of course, we want an agriculture that will be able to produce as much as we need. According to a UN survey, by 2050, agriculture yield need to increase by 70%. And of course, this requires concerted effort. It is obvious that we need to properly manage and handle natural resources. Let's start with energy. Let's look on the pie chart on the right. In Thessaly, we have approximately 75% of energy consumed for irrigation. Why is that? Because we extract water from 70 meters deep in order to water our land. We need to reduce energy consumption required for water drilling. Also, we need to reduce the fossil fuel that's currently consumed. We need to reduce the use of fertilizers as much as this is feasible. We need to reduce fertilizers in general and pesticides. We need to reduce the machines and the equipment that we need, because all the tractors you see moving around need huge energy, have huge energy needs. And when you do the multiplication with the hectares that they have to cover, you realize how extensive the energy needs are. Another part, the soil. We need to come up with ways to improve soil health. Today in the European Union, 70% of lands is unhealthy. Therefore, we need to increase the organic content, the density and the biodiversity of the soil. We need to improve the consistency and composition of the soil, relieve its pressure in order to preserve this valuable resource. Third element, water. Water has 4 properties which also mean that there are also 4 risks. Safety against flood, drought. That was a narrow escape for Greece, but I don't know what will happen next year. We also need water to drink, water to irrigate our crops. And let's say, and you know that some types of crops have higher needs in water than others, so it depends on the arable land and the type of land used. And of course, water can also provide cheap and clean energy, creating the water reservoirs in the mountain. Greece is a country full of mountains, so every mountain could have a reservoir that could generate power, that could also be the safety reserve in case of drought, etc. Now, which are the ideas that have been put forward on the table? We have precision medicine or the regenerative agriculture. We also have 3 pillars. We have rotation of crops, continuous coverage with plant protection and plant residues, and of course reduction or elimination of soil tillage. Those are the 3 elements that we can use, and those 3 things can yield tangible and multiple benefits. First of all, we reduce consumption of fuel, and that's an immediate benefit. To sow, we need €4, and in order to prepare the soil, we need to spend another €5 to €6, where we can have rotation crops and thus further reduce our energy consumption. We need fewer machines, less strong tractors, and those things can help us meet the goal of saving on energy and resources. Crop rotation, if we have specific type of crops, we will be able to reduce that in the case of fodder legumes, and we also need to increase the organic content of our land, something that can help us prevent soil erosion, meaning losing phosphorus and other nitrogen elements that we need in order to ensure that soil is fertile. It will improve the water permeability, the water retention capacity of the soil, and all those things mean that we save on water. It is apparent that in the case of water, we need to come up with ways to save those resources. We need reservoirs, we know that. If we don't do that, well, I'm afraid that we will not have the water that is required to irrigate our crops in summer. But this is not enough. We also need water transfer systems around the plain. We need water distribution systems in our fields. And then we need to raise awareness among the farmers so that they can use highly effective irrigation systems and water as much as is needed. Irrigation for the time being is based on the experience of the farmer. If we see that the plant leaves are black, okay, they understand that they have watered it too much. But what happens in the case of the roots of the plants? Because this water that is drained also carries along the nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and we also pollute underground waters. And then we try to explain why we have such an extensive underground water pollution. Agriculture digitization, I believe that there are more competent speakers than myself to talk about that. I don't want to elaborate on it right now. We have sensors in place that allow us to measure a series of things. Also, with soil sensors or drones, things that allow us to collect data about the quality of the soil, On the left side, you can see a tractor that has an integrated sensor that can detect the call of the plant in order to determine how much fertilizer they should administer. This was created by a Greek startup. It's been exported around the world. In the middle, we have the possibility of opting for drip irrigation and separating the land in zones. That's in a vineyard, in Magnesia. And then we also have other sensors that are installed in water fountains, either from desalination, rainwater wells, organic cleaning wells, and this means that they can create the right mix of water in order to irrigate the land through drip irrigation. Well, over the past years, those things have been tested through the relevant projects. We have tested various aspects that have to do with wheat, and thanks to software that can improve decision-making among the farmers, our yield has improved. We have decreased the production cost by 30%. We offered tangible profit to producers because we were able to sell their wheat at a higher price. We reduced the carbon footprint by 15%, water footprint by 6%, and the ecological footprint by 2 to 8%. And we also achieved the production of products that are suitable for the pasta-making industries. So, agriculture can also use residues in order to generate power through the biomass. It can also increase the retention of carbon in the soil, and meaning that this can absorb carbon dioxide from the air. Here you can see the 4 pour 1000 French term, that this is in France. They had proposed to increase by 0.04% the organic content of the soil, something that would enable better carbon dioxide sequestration. And of course, we know that the use of methanic fermentation can also be helpful in terms of energy production, because we can also include elements that enable us to recycle as much as possible in order to reduce the inputs requirement. Now, the conclusions. We see that we do have the practices that are beneficial and can be implemented in order to reduce energy consumption and also remove carbon dioxide from the air. But how can we do that? Okay, we might expect from dear God to enlighten farmers so that they're doing it on their own initiative. The second possibility is to start implementing what we have just discussed. Mr. Klonaris talked about the fact that we do have the agricultural applications. Mr. Giannakakis talked about the lack of education. We don't have a lifelong training program for farmers. We don't have a system that makes it compulsory for farmers to undergo training or education. We're missing all those things. And this generates bad problems. Another issue, we have the Common Agricultural Policy that provides for a series of policies which are European policies. I don't believe that such a policy can make the decision for us about whether we're going to irrigate 30%, 40% or 50% of the land. It's not the CAP's job to decide whether we are going to consume polished tomatoes in summertime rather than producing Greek tomatoes. This is up to the national agricultural policy to be determined. Since 1980, when we joined the European Union, we made a decision to increase subsidies and aids, and that's all we care about. Couple payments, couple dates, okay, the maize is going to receive subsidy, okay, we will grow more maize, but what are we going to do? Are we going to reduce crops of alfalfa or any other sort of spinach? What should we reduce in order to replace it with maize? So, where are we going with this policy? What the ultimate result will be? I believe that alongside CAP that offers the right resources to boost people's income, we also need to establish our own national policy that will aim at developing a highly productive, high-yield agriculture that will meet our needs. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ τον κύριο Γέμπτο. Θα έλεγα ότι
Thank you, Mr. Gemtos. I would say that the European policy doesn't prohibit us from making national choices. So it is how we design our national choices within the framework of the European regulations. So it would be good to be careful about our strategic plan to make the necessary adjustments, because now it is asked from member states to submit their own strategic plan within the framework of the European CAP. So, let's continue. Okay, let me add to that. Basically, what Mr. Gemtos said is what Mr. Vasilikos said before, small wins. Small wins for the production sector that meet policy targets and should be celebrated as small wins and then integrating them into the AKI system that will transfer them theoretical knowledge to implementation and vice versa. Now the floor to Mr. Kalfas, who will definitely add to this discussion. He is an agronomist. He works at the American Farm School, and he is the coordinator of the Internet for Food Alliance cluster, a cluster which is basically linked to the Green Deal digital transformation into the Greek agri-food sector. Now, let's see in practice how we can implement policies and achieve a small win. Let's see the experience of the small cluster, the so-called InoFA. The floor to you, Mr. Kalfas. Thank you for your presence. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank Mr. Balakakis and the entire organizing team. I'm here to talk to you about a project which was developed thanks to our romanticism, but now we keep going with that very passionately. It is the cluster called Internet of Food Alliance. It is an innovation cluster that links agri-food businesses, participating agri-food businesses, under a joint need, a common need. What is the shared need? The need to harmonize with the official European policies, such as digital transformation, green transformation, and also the need created by the market itself, by supply chains, food supply chains. In order to survive and exist in such a chain, you have to be able to speak the same language. Quite often, We've seen real economy examples, Greek businesses with premium products, which find it difficult to use the databases to enter the quality characteristics of the product, because people don't talk to each other to order a product. Everything happens through a digital system, and these digital systems are upgraded much quicker compared to human knowledge. This is why we had this idea about this cluster, and if you allow me to say so, it is a farm-to-fork form of digital agriculture, because it links primary production businesses to end consumers. Let me move on with my presentation. Digital transformation and green transformation are now official policies. In our opinion, we have to align with them and achieve progress through implementation of these policies. The cluster's philosophy was to follow to allow the product flow through the supply chain to be accompanied with a flow of information, because information is valuable. Unless you have this piece of information, you cannot go back and see what was done wrong, what you could do better. The project was divided into two phases. It was funded by the General Secretariat of Research and Innovation. During the first phase, we developed and established this innovation cluster. Who participated: distribution companies, wholesalers, retailers, producers, civil society, manufacturing businesses, and of course technology providers. Everyone had their own role to play, and what you can see on this map are the points in which the various participants are located. During the first phase, we had to map the status quo, starting from our participating companies. Then we had to add some infrastructure where nothing existed, to train members of the companies in order to understand these technologies, because they would be called upon to use them, so they should become familiar with them. Also, develop an online tool so that each stakeholder could proceed to a self-assessment, answer some questions, and find out what their level is based on the criteria that we set up. And of course, we had to connect with other clusters and proceed to publicity actions in order to raise awareness around our initiative and allow as many people and as many businesses as possible to benefit from it. 2 months ago, the second phase began. The second phase, now businesses, enterprises that submitted their business plan are called upon to implement it with their associates of preference and as they prepared it. There are 11 business plans, 11 working sections that cover the entire spectrum of activities. So, smart farming and traceability. So I'm talking about autonomous systems that are installed in each and business separately, individually, and the business can get in real time information from the land, from the fields, from its facilities, from all the points where primary production takes place, and also a traceability system that would not resemble to the legacy systems with papers. Everything will be online, on a platform, reliable and available. The second plan is for wholesalers, how wholesalers that cooperate amongst themselves can do that in an automated way, still adjusted to the Greek context. Third, development of human resources. It has been repeatedly said today that training is of essence. We did that during the first phase, but in the second phase of the project, there is an entire business plan for training, for human resources development. We are going to develop, let's say, a tutoring program where someone gets to know from first-hand technologies, be trained in them, and then make an informed decision. Can I do that? There is also a verticalized olive oil business which will use digital tools, also food distribution, a business plan for food distribution. So apart from the digital aspect, there is the environmental aspect as well. So we are going to measure the environmental impact, and we are going to look for opportunities to improve this impact. Environmental friendly practices, we mean the replacement, the substitution of chemical inputs with other new categories of inputs, such as biostimulators. This will be implemented in greenhouses on the island of Crete, again in combination with digital technologies. Retailers, a big supermarket chain, participates that will now digitalize its traceability system, but also its communication, direct communication with end consumers. And now communication takes place as the consumer is shopping. We also have the supply chain for meat and meat products. It's a difficult sector to keep track of. The participating entities are meat-producing farms, but also shops that, retailers that sell meat to end consumers. The other business plan is about the utilization of electronic systems for a more rational management of a farm. This will allow them to control costs. 10th business plan, mass catering, interaction with visitors. We all prepare food for end consumers, but end consumers can be... It is difficult to find them for feedback in mass catering businesses. It is difficult to get some feedback, to get information in order to adjust your supply chain. And the 11th section is about expos, openness activities, exports. We have to be able to track them and track the markets where we export. Quite often we have excellent products, but they were not interesting for the potential customer that we had in mind. So we will monitor the German market. And to give you an idea, a visual of what this cluster means, here you can see the various business plans depicted on the map. And the arrows account from the relationships that have developed, and each one plays their own role. There are technology providers, there are beneficiaries, everybody will benefit in order to produce the final outcome to everybody's benefit. These are the plans, the working sections. During the first phase, there were some dots on the map where people decided to create a cluster. Now, in the second phase, on this map, you can see how this theoretical cooperation happens in practice. Businesses are interconnected, they exchange services, they partner together to do real work, and we are quite proud because everything is based on Greek human resources. There's nothing that we have we import from abroad, of course, hardware not included. So everything is developed from people from this market because they know this market. The needs are identified by the beneficiaries. So a business with a specific need identified it as a problem, and we are looking for a solution to this problem. And when this solution is developed, it will benefit the business in question. I hope that next year we will be able to present tangible examples and outcomes to you. That's our cluster in just a few words. Nothing all on my part. There are 30 seconds left. So, optimization of the operation method, increased environmental sensitivity, which is an advantage now for enterprises, for companies. Environmental guarantees will be something that will allow you to enter certain markets, a prerequisite. Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τον κύριο Κάλφα. Και ερχόμαστε στην τελευταία εισήγηση.
Kalfas, and this brings us to the last presentation. But before giving the floor to Mr. Giannakakis,
Θα έχει ιδιαίτερη σημασία.
I would like to say that it is very important to be informed about the positive results due to these actions, and it's also good to listen to the negative experiences because we know that knowledge should be disseminated in all its forms, either it has to do with positive outcomes or not. Mr. Giannakakis has the floor now. He also addressed you earlier. He's a Padua University graduate. And this is useful because it helps us understand many things about your background. Mr. Giannakakis is the Vice President, National Union of Agricultural Cooperatives, and member of the BOD of ELGA, which is the Greek Agricultural Insurance Organization, as well as member of the BOD of Venice Growers. He has long-standing experience on issues that are of concern for the agricultural population, and now he will explain how cooperatives and collective schemes can lead us to what we need today, because we want to restructure the agri-food sector and positively include the Greek agri-food system in our economy, an economy that is restructured, is rebuilt. It tackles challenges in terms of the environment, as well as the quality and safety of the products. And I would also like to say something that I didn't mention before, but I believe it is very interesting in light of the discussions we had in the previous chapter and this chapter. Global food security is an issue. It's something that I have repeated, and when we analyze those markers, we can see that food security ranks very high. Mr. Kouretas might want to share more about that. So we are being faced with international assessment and evaluation of food security and food quality in our country. And I believe that this should be a tool that will reposition our agriculture in the world. And this is of essence, particularly when we talk about the way in which cooperatives can boost their reliability so that they can meet the needs or serve the goals set by government, talking about governance, digitalization, internationalization of Greek agriculture, cross-sectoral collaboration. I believe that you are the most competent one to elaborate on those things and share your proposals and thoughts.
Ευχαριστώ και πάλι την εταιρεία AgriBusiness Forum.
I would like to thank AgriBusiness Forum and all of you who are here and are patient enough to stay with us until now. And I would also like to thank Mr. Kassimis for his kind words.
Είμαι και μέλος του Διοικητικού Συμβουλίου του ΕΛΓΑ και έχω λοιπόν μια συνολική εικόνα.
And I would like to share with you the big picture of the impact of climate change in Greek agriculture. On the basis of data available so far, we see that the consequences of climate change in the past year further deteriorate, considering the amounts that we at ELGA, the Greek Agricultural Insurance Organization, has disbursed. Up to 2015, compensations that were being paid by ELGA to its beneficiaries did not exceed the revenues of our organization. This meant that they did not go beyond 140 million euro. With a budget of 165 million euro, we would give 20 to 25 million euro to address the standard fixed costs and the hail protection system in Central Macedonia and Thessaly. So, after 2015, as of the year 2016, those phenomena became more pronounced, and we saw that farmers would claim more compensations, and that amount exceeded this 140 million euro budget we had per year. Up until 2020, this number equaled up to 160 million euro in compensation. But further damage was caused by rainfall. And ELGA decided that this type of damages could not be covered by our insurance benefits, and they keep refusing to compensate farmers. Personally, I believe that we shouldn't do that. I believe that we should compensate them. Now, you do realize that when we talk about heavy rainfalls and all those extreme weather phenomena that have further been aggravated, InoFA, Thalia phenomena, are more pronounced, and it was thanks to the state aids that were given to ELGA that those farmers received a compensation. Last year, we paid approximately 360 million euro, and this year, the registered damages exceed 250 million. We managed to keep our organization alive thanks to the following fact. Since 2011, our legislation provided for the revenues of ELGA. Apart from farmers' contributions, could also come from subsidies from the Ministry of Rural Development. That could amount up to 20% of the overall revenue collected by ELGA. So we talk about 32 million euro per year. After 2011, the Greek state, I don't know if it's for good or what is for better or worse, given that we had enough contributions paid by farmers, the state did not have to pay that. And then we saw that that was a substantial deficit. So we decided to collect retroactively those money sums in order to meet our needs. But this money is not limitless. So we do realize that we are being faced with problems of survival. Measures need to be taken, measures that will increase the revenue and of the organization. But considering the legal form of our organization, this is practically impossible because we're a legal person governed by private law, and therefore all insurance companies would refuse to pay that because they say, okay, that you give this money to a certain organization, and if it's a legal person governed by private law, you should as well compensate Inter-American or other insurance private companies. Those are issues that need to be addressed by the government in the upcoming year. Now, the phenomena described before became even worse, and this led to substantial problems for our farmers because those compensations are not being paid directly. There is always a delay in their payment. So a substantial number of farmers had to sell their products in order to ensure liquidity, even in the black market, and as a result, we saw some members withdrawing from our organization, withdrawing from cooperatives, because they preferred to be able to sell their products in the black market without any invoice, without any registration of the sale. For the time being, thanks to the intervention of the central organization and discussions with the government, Mr. Vesiropoulos, we managed to slow down this leakage of members. But we know that we have farmers who are not full-time farmers, and they realize that they no longer have a motivation or an incentive to give out their products in the black market in order to avoid taxes. But this does not mean that we have also addressed the problem of liquidity or the right disposal and allocation of our agricultural products. I'm talking about my region, Imathia. We suffered substantial damage from heavy rainfall. So there is a disruption in the organized trade system. Now, apart from the loss of products from cooperatives, and this is a problem that also affects the private sector because they have to buy those products and to regularly invoice their clients. There's also another issue with the sustainability of cooperatives and private businesses, because when you lose your product, it means that your turnover is decreased, and therefore that affects your sustainability. This also led to financing problems and lending capacity by bankings. And apart from the primary sector, we also see that the packaging and processing sectors have been affected as well. No need to talk about the shortage in manpower, which is a colossal problem in our sector. This year in our sector, we had to have 2 shifts only in our packaging system rather than 3 shifts, or if we wanted to have 3 shifts, we had fewer people working there, meaning that there were shortages. And you know that when we have the rainfall or drought period during the summertime, these methods were not able to meet the collection and the products retrieval process. And apart from production reduction problems, we are also being faced with issues that have to do with quality, because things that we were able to save, let's say, from the rainfall this summer are fragile quality-wise. So we see that they are kept in fridges, and there are problems because they're fragile. They might go bad or rot on their way to the sales point. So this means that the reliability and quality of our product are affected. Those are the main issues that affect agricultural production and the sustainability and integrity of the entire mechanism. So something needs to be done. We cannot wait for farmers' contributions to increase at least the level that will allow us to pay those compensations, and of course the state is unable to constantly pay those compensations because we know that funds are not enough. Measures are necessary in order to support the income of farmers and businesses when it is needed. And on the other hand, we also need to protect the farmers. It is therefore an imperative need to see whether we can build on the existing infrastructure, protection against hail, systems that are implemented in France where they have meteorological balloons launched in the air that protect crops from hail with specific protective measures. Elgodimitra is going to prepare a proposal about how we can make the right interventions in the field to prevent congestion phenomena due to the rainfall and prevent fruit from falling off the tree, and we saw that that was effective. Either we could also have, let's say, dust placed on the sides of the field in order to decompress the soil, or there are also compressed air injection machines that help soil breathe better. So what we need is experimental applications, technical solutions in order to address these issues and save our production. And so we also need to consider our options through the European funds. Right now, there is another pilot application when it comes to peach crops. The comments were off the microphone, so measure number 17 provides a compensation for income that is lost due to various conditions. This is something that had been included in the previous rural development program, and now we believe that it's imperative need to further support this measure to put it under test, and that's why we try to do that in the case of peach, because we know that producers are well organized there, and if this model is successful, we're going to extend it to cover all the other types of crops. Therefore, thanks to the European subsidies and support, we will be able to support and compensate farmers for lost income due to those various conditions. At the same time, we need to see what will happen with the hail protection nets, with the glass share protection measures. In France, they have such systems in place using water. What do we do in Greece? Nothing. We need to see what will happen with the hail protection nets. In the previous tender, there was an interest for 6 million. Now we launched a tender for 15 million nets. Now we actually need 34 million, and we see whether there's a possibility of receiving a subsidy for that, but there's a weakness in that. And the question is how quickly we can have the right approvals in order to install all those systems. But a strategic plan is also required. I know that Spain and other countries have drafted a plan to tackle climate change. For example, have kiwis and other type of fruit. In winter time, they need to be preserved in cold conditions. In the case of stone fruits, we need to consider what will happen in the upcoming 10 years, because the average temperature of a season has increased. So what will happen? Some crops will not be able to yield fruit. Maybe we need to transfer those plans, but no relevant planning whatsoever has been in place. And this is why university institutions, state institutions, in collaboration with cooperatives, should draft such a plan so that we know what we plant, where we plant it, and what we should avoid.
So all this is necessary. It must happen in order to tackle climate change and, of course, in a structured way and systematic way save our product, because we don't care so much about the compensations, because the compensation is a very small part of the cost that we have incurred, and we lose our added value because we cannot export the product, we cannot employ our human resources, and we lose clients. When we go to international expos, we do our best to find clients. It's a pity to lose them because there is no product. So it's an absolute necessity for the government to prepare a plan to tackle climate change in the agri-food sector. That's all on my part. Thank you. Of course, we are looking forward to the proposal of the National Union of Agricultural Cooperatives. What you've talked about is very important, crucial issues that are closely linked to climate crisis. I won't raise any questions, but of course, if there is a question from the audience, we will be happy to take it.
Μάλλον, ο Φίλιππος. Ο κύριος Παπαδόπουλος.
A comment from Mr. Papadopoulos, a question from Mr. Papadopoulos. Hello, Philippos Papadopoulos from InoFA. A question to Mr. Klonaris. It's very difficult to disagree with everything you've said. So I did try a lot, but I found something I disagree. You talked about redistribution towards smaller holdings. And small was defined based not on hectares, but on the financial size of the holding. So isn't this a way to push people towards black market and open-air markets and reduce their participation in cooperatives, where it is obligatory to issue a receipt? Can we take more questions? Because the lunch break has already started, so let's take all questions and then we will answer them. Mr. Giannakakis. Balakakis, sorry. Yes, please do ask your question. So far, I have attended 6 sessions and it's my first question. And why is that? Because Mr. Klonaris talked about the strategic plan. The strategic plan is about the Greek policy, our policy, the proposal submitted by the Greek Ministry of Rural Development and Food to the European Commission regarding the agri-food sector. And it is a 4-year plan from 2023 to 2027. I'm leaving aside everything said in previous panels, but from this panel I keep that important things have been said. A crucial issue For example, Mr. Giannakakis talked about ELGA and what will happen with the compensations, because 1 year later maybe ELGA won't have any money to pay. Mr. Gemtos talked about the management of water, reservoirs, etc., and the problems with soil. Generally speaking, we've talked about the problem of training, how it used to be, how it now is. The issue of advisors is a competence that goes from body to body anyway. And what is the role of training in the agri-food sector? And let me add to that the new varieties. That's a new topic that I have just introduced that has not been mentioned. Anyway, you, as scientists, as experts, have raised and put these things on the table quite often. The European Commission executives were here. They all clearly talked about policy, because unless it is a policy, nothing happens. So right now, we have the new strategic plan that has been submitted, and I, for myself, not an expert on the agri-food sector, but I feel that we are floating in an ocean and we're just swimming. That's a question to everybody. And a question basically to Mr. Klonaris. So, what will be our strategy? Will we have any? Are there any other questions?
Όχι, ωραία. Ξεκινάμε με τον κύριο Κλονάρη και...
We will start with Mr. Klonaris and then everyone else, any other panelist can take the floor. I will start with redistributive payment, the question asked by Mr. Papadopoulos. It is about the distribution of payments. So basically, we try to solve the problem of 30% of beneficiaries getting 80% of payments. This is what we try to resolve. It's not about cooperatives. The comments are off the microphone. So there is no side effect because these royalties, these rights are individual. Cooperative members receive individual payments. It's not that all payments are collected by the cooperative. No, the member has a right to a payment, is beneficiary of a payment. So the redistributive payment has nothing to do about cooperatives. People that are cooperative members receive individual payments. We didn't only take into account the hectares. A simple method would be to take the average of cultivated land in Greece. Everybody over average would be considered to be a big producer, all the other ones small producers. The average is 77 stremas. But 77 stremas of wheat compared to 77 stremas of grapes, of vineyard, are completely different. So we started with the financial figures and then we converted them to land. And this is why we came up with the limits that I presented to you before. It's not as simple as I presented because there are mixed holdings as well. The only problem with redistributive payment that we were concerned about is of breaking up holdings. So somebody who has 130 stremas of arable crops is excluded from redistributive payments. So now that person could give half of this land to his wife in order to be beneficiary of the payment. That was our only concern. So the redistributive payments have no side effects on cooperatives or cooperative membership. Now, as to the strategy, as to Mr. Balakakis' question, where there is the European policy framework, the Greek strategic plan, as Babis pointed out before, seeks to integrate the European framework in the needs and characteristics of Greek agriculture. So many things that we do are not done in other member states, and vice versa, of course, because agriculture is not the same throughout Europe. It has completely different characteristics from member state to member state. And the fragmentation, the very small land plots, are not a big disadvantage. I mentioned that before. And why did I say that? Because we produce quality products according to the reports. We have small land plots that can give this quality of the end product. We have good products and environmentally friendly products. But we cannot trade this small production. And here is where cooperatives come into play. We are in favor of cooperatives. And there are measures in the strategic plan in favor of cooperatives to boost them, to support them. And we can further specify these measures. It is part of our strategic plan to support cooperatives. It is our strategy to finally develop an Acquis system. We've been discussing this since 2003. All these years have gone by, nothing has happened. We have research outcomes that are never implemented in the fields. Sensors started being used, some innovative producers or groups of producers used them. But it's not just 10 cooperatives. This is what Spain does. They have large cooperatives and they implement policies through 10 large cooperative schemes. They don't have so many interlocutors, so many stakeholders. This is a governance problem. We have to change this system. And so far as our strategic planning allows us to do so, we are moving towards this direction. The 10 measures that I very quickly presented to you are not different from what Mr. Gemtos said. We have measures against climate change. We have measures in order to protect and conserve our soil. Have you gone to the Cyclad Islands? All these slopes are abandoned. And we want to protect the soil on the islands. I don't know whether I've covered you.
Όχι, προς Θεού, μην με παρεξηγήσετε.
Please, don't get offended. Don't misunderstand me. I just mentioned all the problems. The strategic plan might be really good, but all these problems that you have identified, we have identified throughout the conference. So the question is, are they going to be resolved through the strategic plan? You mentioned that in the previous CAP, there were funds that were not absorbed, if memory serves me right. The new strategic plan has some provisions, but everything is about policy. You prepared a really good plan, but now it's all about policy and implementing this plan. Allow me to add something. This is a dilemma in strategic planning as well. Are we planning based on what? Based on European funds absorption? Or develop the agricultural sector that you dream of? There is no certain answer to that. Sometimes we know where we're headed, but some measures are difficult to be implemented, so we may not reach the destination. So planning is about achieving targets, that's the main thing. It's about prioritizing at the national level what you want to prioritize based on environmental, social, and economic criteria. And of course, not wasting and losing resources. This is why eco schemes really tormented us. We are talking about 430 million per year. Unless many farmers go into eco schemes, the funds won't be absorbed. This is why we ask from the Commission to be a bit more flexible when it comes to absorption, because during the first 2 years there will be some losses. So we want them to allow us to absorb these funds afterwards. That's the fight we should give later on.
But we know that there is a relevant provision for the first 2 years, right? Well, not necessarily. You mean that they're more relaxed in terms of how the resources and funds are being absorbed the first 2 years, you're not losing resource. Okay, no. Okay, I would like to thank Mr. Klonaris. If there are no other questions, I believe that we can conclude this chapter. I won't yield to the temptation to repeat things that we have already mentioned, but I believe that this and the previous chapter paved the way for discussing the strategy of agricultural development. I believe that this or the other way, those two chapters, will also open the floor to public debate, and we know that agricultural policy and the strategic plan of our country needs to be implemented as early as January 1st of 2023, but the necessary changes will call for continuous adaptation, adjustment to new conditions. Mr. Klonaris is very well aware of that, and this is why the strategic planning has been considered in light of the conditions before the Ukrainian war, before the pandemic. Therefore, the relevant committee has a very difficult task to accomplish, because they need to meet the needs that emerge due to the consecutive crises, because we also have the energy crisis, the Ukrainian war crisis. Thank you so much for your attention. A comment that was off the microphone. Okay, 30-minute break. And we will get back for the next chapter.
Καλή συνέχεια.